Hello and welcome to episode 70 of the Narrative Wargamer Podcast. I am Tony Rhodes, and tonight I'm joined once again by Mr. Dan Wellington.
Hello.
And Mr. Daniel Foley.
I'm back. Hello. It's me again.
It's you again. Yes, it's been a while since we've had both Dans on the show, so I apologise to viewers and listeners if it gets a little confusing at any point, but typically we have Dan, aka Redtooth, and then we have Daniel, aka Mr. Foley.
Typically.
My class. Yeah.
Typically, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it's good to be back. Good to have you both on again. And tonight we are going to be having another one of our On Crusade episodes. So later on in the episode, we will be talking about the Death Guard on Crusade this time, because Dan is our local Death Guard player, as it were, and you've had the chance to give the codex a quick spin in one game since it came out, haven't you? And you've had a little flick through the Crusade rules, I believe.
Yeah, I've had a relatively thorough read through of the Crusade rules. We'll go into that when we get to it, but it's a little bit complicated.
Yeah, I mean, they always tend to be, but also quite rewarding, I find, when you get into them, especially if it's got some really good, fun mechanics in there. And I think the Death Guard traditionally have had some very interesting Crusade mechanics, so I'm curious to see how they're doing in 10th edition. And yeah, other than that as well, Daniel is going to talk tonight a little bit about the Horus Heresy reveals and updates as well, because you're our sort of resident Horus Heresy player at the moment, and
Apparently, yeah. All right, I'll go with that.
well, so neither myself or Dan are playing Heresy at the moment. Like, I've not had a Heresy army myself at any point previously, and I keep sort of like an eye on it, just what's going on in like on Warcom and stuff and updates, but I'm not so au fait with the minutiae of what's coming up in the new edition, as it were. But I have seen some very imposing looking Terminators in an upcoming box set, which might end up coming across
bringing
my
back shoulder pads, bringing back 1980 shoulder pads that kept on going out of fashion.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll be looking forward to discussing all that as well shortly. So yeah, before we dive into those sort of topics for tonight, we'll first of all have a little catch up with what we've been up to recently. So yeah, I guess Daniel, you're the one who's been away the longest from the show. Do you want to give us a little update as to what you've been up to in the hobby recently? Been playing, collecting?
I've been up to quite a bit. So I've got heavily. I mean, I was always a bit into Heresy anyway. So I've got, as I said, got into Heresy. Been to a couple of events. One being the Goonhammer narrative one, which was a while back.
Oh wow! I didn't know you'd actually been to that. Love to hear about that.
It was amazing. And if you want to do an episode like on how they do their events, they're pretty good. Actually, I would say it's probably one of the most immersive narrative events I've been to. And I've been to a fair few, and not just theirs.
I know at least one you've been to.
Well, yeah, I've been to several. But I didn't want to say it's the best narrative event I've ever been to, Tony, because I feel that's a bit like unfair on you. Just going, oh yeah, yours wasn't very good, but theirs was amazing. Yours was very good. Yours was very good, Tony. That's why I used the word.
It's perfectly fine for both events to be
exactly,
very good.
exactly. Thanks for putting me in that position, Tony.
You're welcome.
That's all right. No, I would say, to give you a sort of a soupçon of what it was like, they had an AET, Adeptus Titanicus, event going on beside us, and they were destroying terrain on their table, which was destroying terrain on our tables, and
that's like great.
That. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Cool.
So big shout out to them. That was a while ago. I also won a tournament.
Dun dun dun.
I will caveat that with it was for 2nd edition, and I can't really call it a tournament. It was an event by the guys from Jam, and two things. It was really good fun playing 2nd edition with strangers, which sounds strange, but with who I play, because obviously there's not many of us who play second edition in the area. Obviously, we end up playing the same people, so it was good to play.
Yeah, I can imagine that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like having a close-knit like Necromunda group and then actually getting to go
Yeah.
play a Necromunda event where you play lots of different people.
Yeah.
Just to clarify,
and
we're talking second edition 40k, right?
Oh yes, sorry, we are. Yeah, hence why it was called Jam. It's not because of second edition was fond of condiments. It was more. Is jam a condiment?
Well, I mean,
no.
Second edition was very much the red era, so it could have been.
I'm more concerned, is jam a condiment? Anyway, regardless, you could jam your weapon using a sustained fire dice, a bit like, I suppose, in fact, it is where Necromunda got it from their ammo check rolls. So it's the same dice, but just different change on there. The guys who did it was a fantastic event. It was very friendly. I got to play armies I've never even dreamed of playing. I got to use my second edition Ultramarine army. I'm now working on a second edition Tyranid army, which is not getting anywhere soon, so I don't even know if I'm going to get it done for next time. So yeah, it's been really busy, and I'm just really, as I'm rambling, I'm really looking forward to Heresy. I'm currently converting up some plastic Angels Tears, which, if you are a Heresy fan, you will know that is Blood Angels. So I'm going to be doing some bangles for Heresy. Exciting.
Lovely.
How are you?
Well, I myself, I've been busy. It's funny that Heresy's actually come up as one of the recurring topics so far, because as part of client work that I've been doing for Team Unrelenting recently, I've actually just finished a couple of Heresy characters that came across my paint station. So I've got I believe the term is Legion Praetor, is it? But it's a Space Wolf one that's just been finished recently.
Yeah.
So this is a really lovely model. Like, this is...
Yeah, they are. They
really
are.
got the whole Viking vibe going with them before the 40k chapter sort of caught up with its new release.
Did you hear about the doggy helmets that came out for about 2 weeks and then they got taken down and resculpted?
I didn't know they'd been resculpted.
They got resculpted.
I saw them and like initially getting released and then memed everywhere over all the Warhammer communities.
I'll tell you what, if you manage to get some, hold on to those, because they'll be worth a bit of money in the future. And you'll be laughed at for eternity, but they will be worth some money. So,
and then also one of the tech priests, specifically from the Heresy range as well. So the Martian priest. But yeah, they'll be making their way back to the client soon. But yeah, they were fun to paint. It was interesting working on the armor on the Space Wolf, because there was like a paint recipe to get the right sort of color tone for it, and I was like, Mechanicus standard grey just covered with Agrax, and I was like, sure, but it seems to work. It's that sort of like dark tonal, almost slightly greeny blue. It actually looks quite nice. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
You tempted to join us, Tony?
But yeah, so I've actually been working with a lot of resin kits recently, like as in Forge World resin kits. So I don't know if it's just Chris has been sending them my way because I've got experience with working with them as part of the as a member of the Unrelenting team. If I'm more experienced in working with resin than some of the other team members, I'm not sure. But I've been working on a bunch of Middle Earth minis as well for a client. So I've basically been painting through the entire range of the Easterlings for Middle Earth strategy battle game, and that's a lot of fun. I've gone through a whole bunch of different Easterling characters, so like captains, dragon priests. There's a couple of like named individuals, but they're all like resin Forge World kits, and it's funny how you can tell the difference between the like early 2000s like Finecast / Forge World kits versus some of the ones that came out in the last 5 years. once they have sort of started revising the line a bit more. They are so much cleaner and crisper, and the Easterlings in particular, the new sculpt ones, their armor looks so nice and sharp in the new Forge World resin compared to the old, like, Fancast Reforge World ones.
I do find it interesting how they want to move away from resin, but their resin has actually got a hell of a lot better. Like,
it's really good.
One of the best ones, I think, at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of... I'm talking about cast, I'm not talking about 3D prints.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Sure.
So the client sent through a test model to sort of like first decide whether or not they wanted this Easterling, army doing with Team Unrelenting, and the test model that he sent through was the Dragon Emperor of Rune. So, like the guy on
Just
the
a test.
Palanquin being carried. Yeah, just a test. Yeah, the guy being carried on the Palanquin and carried by like the 6 different warriors. And it's because it's this big, Forge World resin kit. So I put that together and painted that and set it off, and he was really pleased with it. But building it was actually really nice. Like I say, just how crisp the resin was, and actually the detail on it. It was a really, really nice kit. So I've got some more Eastlings coming through soon. I'll be adding to that, and there'll be more pictures of it up on my Instagram. But gaming wise, the other thing I've been doing is I've been getting in a few more games with my demons. I've been enjoying playing around more with my Battle Shock build for my army. I basically just start forcing Battle Shock tests in almost every phase of the game for both me and my opponent's turns, and just constantly forcing mortal wounds on people and really disrupting battle plans when people can't use stratagems on the units that they're expecting to use them on. I enjoy it because it's like it's a different dimension to the gameplay. Like really sort of leaning in that direction creates an unusual puzzle, both for me trying to implement it and for my opponents trying to play around it. So it just creates a sort of unique experience.
Are you mono god, Tony, or are you...
No, mixed god. Well, so it's really it's a weird and interesting mix of the two, because technically I'm using the Nurgle mono god detachment.
Right.
But the way it works is just that all the stratagems and all the enhancements can only be applied to Nurgle units, but there's no restrictions on taking other models. So I like the core of the army is about 60% Nurgle stuff, but then supported by 40% of other things that just synergize well with the unit abilities. So I've got the Changeling, I've got some Flesh Hounds, I've got a Skull Cannon, I've got plans to include Demonettes and Be'lakor and other stuff and blah blah blah. But I did have a really interesting experience in the sense that I got my Great Unclean One on the table for the first time in my last game. So of course, being a brand new Greater Demon, that meant it had to suffer from new model syndrome. Now,
oh dear.
He did eventually, but he did really well and did exactly what I needed him to do in basically, buffing the units needed to buff and then being just a massive roadblock for a key enemy unit. But I just think it was hilarious that for the first game with my Great Unclean One, it's been played against Grey Knights, and the first enemy unit it encounters is a squad of Grey Knight Terminators led by Kaldor Drago. So his first encounter with the enemy, is with the only model in the game that has an anti-demon 2+ weapon.
Yeah. I like the idea that he's first time out of the warp in millennia. Doop 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 doop. Oh, you again?
Yeah. Ultimately, it didn't actually go that badly because the Great Unclean One, he actually did survive like 2 rounds of combat.
Oh, wow.
He survived 2 rounds of combat with Drago and then squished him. Like he went through the squad, and then he did also have some help from a Bloodthirster that came and joined in, but like Graham Kleeman was the one who got like the killing blow effectively on Drago and survived 2 rounds of being stabbed by the best weapon in the game to harm him with, when almost anything else would be wounding him on like 5s or 4s at best. But yeah, it was just a fun coincidence for first time on the table. Literally meets his antithesis nemesis on the table. But yeah, it was a good game. We were playing a mission from the Natchman Gauntlet Crusade book, where basically you've got attacker, defender, and the attacker actually has like all the objective markers in sort of like their deployment zone / midfield, and both players are searching the objective markers to find which one is the location of the vital objective, and then once you find it, the others all disappear, and then it's a big fight.
Oh, that's cool. I like missions like that. There's an urgency to them. They've got that sort of.
Yeah, because the basic premise of how it played is each player could perform one action per turn to search an objective, and if every time you searched, you scored points. But obviously, every time you searched it, if it wasn't the key objective, it disappeared anyway. So then you had to get to the next ones to keep trying to find them. And every time one disappeared, it made the likelihood of the next one being the key objective higher. So like we found it on, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd search, and it turned out I'd found it on the very central objective in the middle of the table. So everyone then piled that way. But what was nice about it was, like, as a story for the game, the idea was that so because I was playing the Grey Knights and I had the Changeling in my army, I liked to think that the Changeling had recently mischievously placed the Grimoire of True Names somewhere on the battlefield, and the Grey Knights were trying to acquire the Grimoire so they could get the true name of the Great Unclean One, leading my army.
That absolutely makes sense from a lore perspective, because it hates Nurgle, so win-win.
Yeah, and that's why the Changeling's hanging around. Like he's busy,
like,
he's busy cackling
like,
and having fun.
Yeah, he's kind of like that person at school who's just sort of sabotaging his mate's time. He's like, yeah, this will be fun, and then secretly he's like spiked his drinks with laxatives or something. Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
He's effectively Starscream. That's what you've got there. You've got Starscream as the Changeling, and the Great Unclean One is Megatron.
But yeah, so that was me. It was a fun game. I'm looking forward to playing again. Hopefully the Great Unclean One won't have to deal with the Grandmaster of the Grey Knights next time he goes on the battlefield, but we'll see.
Was this at a club, Tony? Was this at...
Yeah. Local club night. Funnily enough, it's actually in the Brewdog Brewery up here in Aberdeen.
Wow.
Yeah. They have basically one of the employees who works there, he runs the game club. So because the Brewdog Brewery has an event space for just obviously general event space stuff.
Right.
So we use that. It's actually where the Brewhammer GTs are held multiple times a year. It's Warhammer, but in a brewery.
Yeah,
as the tagline goes. Yeah, it's great. It's actually it's not far away from where I live, so it's pretty convenient. It's just it doesn't run every week. It's as and when the guy who runs it can run it, he does. So when it's on, try to arrange games in the Facebook group and get down there and play. It's a good time.
Nice.
And then Dan, how about yourself? What have you been up
to? Painting and building and stuff.
Good stuff.
Current project is work for a friend doing some Eldari. Did some Harlequins not too long ago with a cool space theme, which was fun. Doing some like sponging to make sort of nebula type effects, and then flicking the white on for the stars.
So you mean like the cloaks had like got the night sky? Is that
yeah.
Space theme? Oh right, that's
really
cool.
They look like space.
Celestial Harlequins.
Yeah. I don't know how I could be more clear about that.
I mean, they are
themed.
space clowns. I think there's room for they are space. I thought you just meant they're space clowns because they are space clowns, but they're actually
they're space clowns in space.
In space.
Yes. So that's been a fun project.
I don't think when he said he was doing a starry theme, he meant he was hand painting star patterns on the on the outfit.
Yeah, that's what I've been painting. Space clowns from space. It's a fun project. Ended up looking pretty good, quite easy to do. So, enjoying that. In terms of on the table, the Blood Bowl League is going well. As I believe I've spoken of before. Playing Norse in this league. I think I'm 3-1 so far. So,
nice.
Pretty good start. The last game was 1-0 to me, but 4-3 to my opponent in casualties. So, it was a scrappy one.
Norse hit hard, but they can't really take a punch very well.
It was Norse against orcs, so it was very punchy.
Oh, that's
very punchy.
That's a bad. Yeah, that can be.
Yeah, and apart from that, as you previously mentioned, played a game with the Death Guard codex.
How was it?
It was in the Tactical Reserves League. As we mentioned previously on a previous episode, the Tactical Reserves rules from the Crusade pack. Pariah Nexus, I want to say.
Natchman Gauntlet.
Okay, sure. Either way, those rules have been imported into match play for this league thing. So far so good. It's quite a fun concept, having a 2,000 point army where 1,000 points starts on the board, then 500 points turns up, and then another 500 points turn up. There's a lot to think about, kind of more than a regular game in terms of reacting to what your opponent's got, because you don't know what your opponent's army is entirely.
Yeah, so for Daniel's benefit here, basically one of the new proposed campaign formats recently is if you play a 2,000 point game, you bring 2,500 points, where you have three options of 500 point reserves.
Right.
So then in turns 2 and 3, you pick one of your 3 waves to come in. So you only end up playing with 2,000 points in the game. And what it is flexibly switched out from game to game, depending on what you feel you need at the time.
So that sounds very interesting.
It is.
Sounds very sort of that tickles my fancy.
I honestly think it would be a great event for them.
Yeah. It also has the effect of making the game sort of elongating the real go point of the game.
But yeah, it's interesting, Daniel, because it means both players only start with 1,000 points on the table.
Oh, right, okay.
So even though it's a 2,000 point game, you're only setting up 1,000 points each, which means setup and deployment is quicker, and you're not just throwing everything you've got at each other turn 1, because both you've only got half your armies on the table.
Where do the reserves come from? Yes. Can they come from deep strike, outflank?
Yeah, deep strike, outflank, all that sort of good stuff.
Cool.
They can be like regular reserves or deep strike reserves.
Yeah, and the only sort of the only little caveat with it is that each 500 group has to come on in its entirety. So you don't just have units piecemeal that show up. It's kind of like turn 2, all of this first 500 block comes in. Turn 3, all of the second 500 block comes in.
Right.
But then that was 1 and 2 out of 1, 2, or 3 as your options. So you could have gone block 1, block 3, and so on.
That does sound fun. As a sort of as a narrative, you're taking effectively what you're doing there is you're taking an order of battle, and you're choosing from you've got your big. I like events when they do that. That is very much of me. That would be it. Yeah, if anyone wants to run that, let me know. That would be cool. I'd like to go to that.
Yeah. It's just very nice and interesting how rather than it being like that order of battle decision being made in the deployment step, it's literally made at the start of turn 2 and then made again at the start of turn 3, because you're not committed to those choices until the moment where you're making them mid-game.
But that's great, because it's like your general saying, right, send in the tank division with the attack stalling, send in the tank division.
It could even
we
be
seem
something
like
as
we're
like,
claiming the.
you know, like they've got a Gorkanaut or whatever in one of their reserve waves. We don't know if it's going to show up. Oh, it did show up. Right, send in our anti-tank wave.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very cool.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so my initial force on the battlefield has Mortarion with some Plague Marines, some Poxwalkers, and a Rhino, a couple of other bits. And then I've got 3 waves that can come in. One of them is a bunch of armor with a Plague Burst Crawler and some Blight Haulers. Another one is just small bodies with Plague Marines and Poxwalkers. And the third option is a big block of Blight Lord Terminators, a big 10-man unit with a character. So kind of got 3 different tactical options there. In the first game I played, I didn't use the Terminators. I was against Ultramarines with quite a lot of Terminators and tougher units, so I felt the armor was required to help me at that stage, so they came in, which was very good. Yeah, I lost the game in the end, so Death Guard aren't that broken. But yeah, there were definitely a few bits where I was like, that's quite a spicy combo in there. It was a good game. I'm enjoying the codex. Definitely like to play more. I understand, obviously, that it's a powerful book, and I don't really like being the guy who's got the most powerful codex, because it always makes me feel a bit guilty. But
I'll give it 2 weeks, mate.
Yeah. It'll probably get nerfed at some point. In fairness, I don't think I'm using the most powerful units. There's a few bits that are like notable standouts, like the Death Shroud Terminators and the Bloat Drone with the heavy Blight Launcher, both of which are sort of real powerful kill everything units, as far as I can tell. And I haven't got either of them, so maybe I'm being nice. But I don't own them, so there's not much I can do about that.
Well, as long as you're having fun with it, and it seems like, like, did your opponent have fun as well? I suppose that's the important thing.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, like, none of my stuff just instantly deleted his stuff, really. So there was a lot of sort of counterplay going on.
Well, that's good, and as long as your opponent doesn't obviously just immediately, like, sigh at the fact that they're having to play Death Guard or something like that, because they've just got this anticipation it's going to be a bad time, it sounds like obviously you had fun, and I think obviously the nature of the tactical reserve format as well that you're playing probably helps mitigate that as well a bit, because again, it's just making everything a bit more piecemeal and a bit more sort of drawn out, like you say, about the go turn, as it were, and stuff like that, and just makes a bit more of a game of it for both players.
Yeah, definitely. It notably swung every time a 500-point block of stuff turned up, as you might expect.
Yeah. Cool. Well then, speaking of having fun times, Daniel, I believe you would like to tell us about the good word that is Horus Heresy.
So, as some of you may have heard, I don't know if you've heard, there seems to be a new edition of the Horus Heresy coming out, which is very exciting. Give you some context. I always wanted to play first edition. I never got to because I didn't run a bank. And so at that time I was not able to afford said models, so I only jumped in second edition. I did have some of the books for first edition, but second edition runs off of what I would call the third edition engine, which for those of you who've been playing 40k long enough is the edition that was from 3rd all the way up to 7th before they did a massive overhaul in 8th. And it added some very interesting things. Now, I would say people who play Heresy, there is a very... they're a different caliber of player than 40k players. This is not to throw any shade on 40k players. I play 40k. But
it's a different beast. It is.
It is, and it's a self-policing community. I hate using that word, but it is. It's a self-policing community. The events are self-policing, and what I mean by that is people don't just build broken lists to beat the snot out of each other. There's very much.
Obviously, I'm not someone who actively plays Horus Heresy myself, but from the outside looking in. My sort of impression of it is that obviously Horus Heresy is a little bit more edging towards like historicals in terms of the way that obviously like it's about recreating
I would
a lot more of the narrative of the universe of the time periods, which in itself lends itself a lot more to sort of pageantry with it all, in the sense of like you want to really show off the specific legion or specific like companies of the Legion that you're collecting and building and putting together, and sort of having that real, almost more military war game to your war game than just sci-fi fantasy, sort of thing.
And it's amazing how different. I know a lot of the time. I know that Solo Auxilia and Mechanicum and Custodes exist. But most of the time, people play it for one reason only, and one reason, which is the legions. And it is amazing how different each one plays. Although you've all got effectively toughness 4 dudes in power armor. So the community is quite, I would say, for the older gentleman and lady. But so there is with new additions. There is a bit of a, I'd say, worry, panic. There's very much a case of the first edition was left alone for like 10 years. Then second edition came along. A lot of people's opinions was it just needed a bit of a tweak, which I am of the opinion of, but I am not. I would have preferred a tweak, but I'm not wholly against. I'm not one of those. No, we will never play this. It is banned. We will never do this. Put these books away. No, I'm not that either. The rule as of today, they've given rumors for strategic effects or traits or something like strategic effects. I can't remember the exact name. Which basically pulls apart morale from. Again, it used to be you're pinned or you're running away. They're your two effects. Now it's you're pinned, which means you don't move. You're stunned, which means something else. One of them, I can't remember the exact names of them, but basically pin means you can't move. One of them means you cannot shoot very well. Suppressed, that's the one. So that they haven't given details of what that means. Is that snap firing, which is hitting on 6s? Is it just a minus to shooting? Nobody really knows. And then you've got stunned, which is basically you've been hit so hard that you can't claim objectives or perform actions or things like that. And then there's routed, which is you're running away. But they've introduced so for me it's hilarious because and Tony, you would find this funny as well because you play Necromunda. So they've added in all the this is why I think you should give it a go, Tony. And actually I say Necromunda, they were originally in Rogue Trader, but they've added in all the mental stats again, which is interesting.
I've seen this. I love a good mental stat. Like anything that introduces
I love a good mental stat, me. Cool. 10s, 14s.
Anything that introduces like psychological warfare elements, or willpower and stuff like that. Even things like intelligence and stuff. All these cognitive levels of capability beyond just physical, strength and toughness sort of stuff.
This is the thing. By doing that, they can pull apart. One of the positives I'm looking at is they can pull apart some of the things, because leadership, having just one mental stat, meaning if you're psychic, your leadership stat is the be all and end all for your psychic powers. But the problem is, you might be really brave but not very good at casting psychic powers, or you might be really good at casting psychic powers but not very brave. So by having willpower, that
or is quite often the case.
Yeah,
You might have really strong willpower, but doesn't mean people like following you or being around you because you're a psyker, and they might not like that.
Yeah. So having come from Necromunda, I think it's a good thing. There's a lot of worry that it's going to be difficult to remember. I think this is where, going back to where you said Heresy is more like a historical game, I think that's where it's not going to be hard to remember, because a Space Marine is a Space Marine is a Space Marine. The only units you're going to need to remember are the special units that each Legion have, and then if you're playing Auxilia, they're guardsmen, so they'll die. It doesn't matter. They'll just die. And to be honest, if someone said, "Oh, but I can't remember the Mechanicum," I can't remember the Mechanicum stuff now anyway because it's so esoteric and weird.
But to be fair,
if you play Mechanicum,
that's the case in 40k. I'm like that whenever I play against Mechanicum in 40k. I'm just like, sure, tell me what it all does, because I don't know.
Yeah. So I think that I can see the problem is that the people who play Heresy now are the people who've been stung by past GW changes, and that's their worry. They're worried because of that, and I absolutely understand that because I have done that about 6 times. So I get that. There are some things I have some concerns. Weapons are now have a damage characteristic, which is highly interesting. So that is exactly, I believe, like 10th and 9th and 8th. So bringing that in is interesting. I'm not massively against. I'm not against that.
And to a certain degree, second.
Second edition as well.
So I'm not massively against that, but the big concern for me is, and this might sound silly because I know this is a 40k podcast, is I want them to not put mission cards in the game, because I don't want to think about that. I want to go, there's the objective.
Things like secondaries.
I don't mind secondaries. So there are secondaries in Heresy. But everyone, the scenario is, here's the 3 secondaries. We're all doing the same thing.
Oh, right.
You get a point for Warlord, but it's still 7th. Yeah, 7th edition.
It's Slay the Warlord, Linebreaker, and
but they're not necessarily always those things. So then, for example, if one, and there is something like, for example, and this is again in 2nd edition, I don't know for 3rd, things like, oh, your opponent has bought a Primarch or a Lord of War, you get an extra point for killing it. Because it's really good at what it does.
I mean, that makes
sense.
That
very much, it very much harks back to Heresy, which is, but the thing is, Primarchs are broken, but they should be. They're Primarchs. So a lot of people, when you go to events, they say, yeah, you can bring a Primarch, or no, you're not bringing a Primarch, and everyone's on the same level. As long as everyone has that social contract is there.
Sure.
Don't care. Some people, we tend to do our sort of around our way is, how many dreadnoughts are you taking, and I'll match that, because dreadnoughts can be a bit of a problem. And even then, they used to be more of a problem than they are now, and I don't think they're that much of a problem. Realistically, unless you were taking an all dreadnought army, which people kind of say don't do that. But the thing I remember
that being at the start of that edition.
Yeah,
like it was.
Everyone kind of
the big thing, right? Everyone went, oh, you can do this, and then everyone decided that's not great.
I think the problem, the where that came a cropper is that dreadnoughts moved from armor values to toughness.
Yeah,
and the if you've got an army of dreadnoughts that would have had armor values, then that wouldn't have been that scary, because you can use grenades, melter bombs, etc. They'd have damage charts. With having toughness, you need to shoot I would say 10 to 15 las cannons at a dreadnought to bring it down.
Yeah.
Which is
anyone who's played 40k from 3rd to 7th edition knows that it's very annoying when you come up against what is ostensibly a dreadnought, but is actually a monstrous creature like the Wraith Lord. That interacted with the game in a completely different way.
Yeah. And it's not bad. As I said, it's not a bad thing. People know what they're doing. They know, there's very much an accord. So it's not really, no one cares. Leave the points. The points aren't mucked around with. We don't need the points to be mucked around with. It's a bit like that in that respect. My major concern, which is something I've kind of looked at with the weapons today, is them making vehicles toughness. I didn't realise how much I missed armor values until I didn't use them for ages, and then went back into 7th, like Horus Heresy, and then went, oh my god, I love armor values. I don't mind. I am at point of recording. I have no idea what they're doing. They've brought out Armor Bane, but that could mean that there's no context. There's no Armor Bane. Not Armor. But what's it?
It's Armor Bane and Flesh Bane. Is what it used to be back in.
Yeah, Armor Bane. But that all that says is it doubles the amount of damage caused, which suggests to me, because they've mentioned hull points are a thing, which are effectively vehicle wounds.
Yeah.
And it's, as I mentioned someone today, they said, oh, vehicles don't have wounds. I said, they have hull points. And I just put, hull points are wounds with extra steps. That's what they are.
Wounds with extra armor values.
I would... best case scenario would be if they are going to move to toughness, they have toughness values for different facings of the vehicle. I would be very happy with that. And if they say, okay, there's no vehicle damage table, you just, once the hull points are gone, it's wrecked, and on a 6 it blows up. I'm not massively bothered by that. I will be bothered if it's just here's a toughness 6 Rhino or whatever it is that they decide. I hope they don't do that, because part of the fun of Heresy is to be able to move around, that there's a lot more tactical nuance of being able, I want to get to that Typhon, because it's got armor 13 at the back rather than armor 14. I've got flare shield, there's a lot more not nuance, because that sounds and I like 40k, so I'm not there's no shade on 40k. It's
a different game.
It's a different game, and it's a more granular game than 40k, which is why I play it. Really.
So would you say you're cautiously optimistic?
I am. Yeah. I am more upbeat than a lot of people are online at the moment, which I think is sad. It's sad because I want to be able to enjoy it. I think I don't think their opinion is invalid, because I think GW have done a lot to cause that kind of feeling in the past. Just the way they've released things and done stuff in the past. And a lot of Heresy players just want to be left alone. I think that's what it boils down to. They just want to be left alone. They just want to hide in their little corners and go, no, you go away with your new toy. I don't want your new toys. Yeah. So,
except they might want the new toys.
Oh,
the new toys themselves.
Yeah, new toys. I was very happy when I saw what was in there. I won't be getting them though, because they don't fit the armies that I'm doing. But oh my goodness, was I a happy man when I saw the Saturnine Terminators, because they scream everything silly about 40k. Like absolutely, it's peak silliness. It's look at these things that the man clearly does not fit in this suit of armor with the shoulder pads that go up to his eyebrows, and it's just brilliant. And he's carrying a plasma gun like a toolbox or a handbag, and he's got a pointy face, and he's, oh, what's that? It's a big dreadnought with even more bigger shoulder pads. Yeah, I was a very happy. It's like when I saw the there are some models I can't stand in 40k, like the Centurions. I hate the Centurions because they're kind of too realistic to be silly. But the I'm going to say now I quite like the baby carrier, the Grey Knight baby carrier. I think is 40k silly enough. I think it's funny and it's ridiculous, and that's fine because that is 40k. In the end of the day, I think a lot of people forget where 40k comes from. It's a satire. It's not real life, people. It's made to be. I mean, there's a planet called Birmingham, for a start. Go look it up. I'm not making that up. That's there. And look up the description. Sorry if you're from Birmingham. Not sorry if you're from Birmingham. I like people from Birmingham. I'm digging a hole. Birmingham's lovely, sort of. Right. So anyway, the Saturnine Terminators are really, really nice. The background for them, I don't know if you've gone into that much, Tony, like yourself. I don't know if you.
I don't know specifically. Basically, my understanding is that it's obviously a particular mark of Terminator armor. Presumably, I think it's from like the Saturnine shipyards or whatever it is. It's like the Saturn pattern, basically, isn't it? Of like
if I told you they didn't actually have any background for these before these models, there is no background. Like, as in, the reason why the Saturnine Terminators exist, the original, if we're going back to Rogue Trader days, is because they were the original prototypes for Terminators, and then they went, they're a bit interesting, and then changed them. So they've always been this sort of, in the artwork, they're hushed tones, people talk about them, they're there, they were in the Horus Heresy trading card game, not trading card game, the card game that they had, the Age of Darkness.
They're a bit ephemeral, and this is the sort of first
time they've never
nailed
so
down.
What they've so this is the first time they've really gone, no, here's the background, this is cool. And basically, you're right, they are a mark of Terminator armor. They were not produced on Mars, they were produced on the moons of Saturnine or wherever that is the equivalent. However, they were stopped to be produced, and Volton went in and went, these are cool, I'm going to make some, and he made them for the rest of the legions. So that's why they've gone with the Salamanders, because he's the one who sort of gifted them to the, because obviously if you know your heresy lore, Volton is the sort of Forge Lord, and he makes all the shiny stuff. So he's made a load of suits for everybody, and lo and behold, no one would have ever seen it coming, but the Traitor Legions have got some too, because he gifted them before they went traitor. Tut, tut, tut.
So yeah, I think with the Saturnine Terminators, it's a really interesting exercise in Games Workshop taking a concept and a model from sort of their very early days and basically reimagining it in a modern iteration, because obviously they're not just gone like, here, we're releasing this model that is clearly meant to be like basically the old thing done with a modern kit. It's literally, they've taken the concept and they've really reimagined what it would look like if it was first envisioned again today, and I think they've done a really good job of it.
Obviously, if you haven't seen the trailer, the cinematic trailer,
no, it's good.
Go and watch it. It's just it's just great. It's full of Space Marine beating snot out of each other. It's great. It's just fantastic.
Well, I mean, I think one last point to make on this then is, I think it'd be really interesting how, for anyone who picks up the new starter box, obviously when it comes out, if they've been playing since Second Ed Heresy, and they bought a release box for that to use as one Legion, doing so again with this box set, I think is going to give people a very diverse and large collection. Even if you'd bought nothing else for Heresy, apart from maybe a couple of characters since the launch of Second Ed, if you've just got the contents of that box set plus the contents of this box set, you've got quite a vast Legion.
Yeah, and also, and I don't know if you're ever going to do any more Heresy episodes in the future about sort of starting a Legion if you're moving from 40k to Heresy or whatever, but some people, me included, like to collect certain marks of armor for certain Legions because they kind of fit. So, for example, the new Mark IIs that are in the box, I believe White Scars were big on Mark IIs, so that box actually makes a really good set for White Scars. But yeah, you can do some really interesting and you can mix and match. You can even do, and if you can't stick to a Legion, you can even do Black Shields if you wanted to. That's a thing. And if you don't know what Black Shields are, if you're not familiar with the Heresy, Black Shields are Marines who have forgone their chapter to fight for themselves, not necessarily for the Emperor or Horus. So that sometimes people don't realise that there were Black Shields that actually fought against both. They're kind of their own thing, and they're interesting. The most famous Black Shields are the ones that are from the aftermath of Istavam 5, which is what the box set is for. So if you think, oh, that'd be quite cool, it's a good starting force for that.
Cool. Well, it sounds like Horus Heresy 3rd edition is going to be off to an interesting start. Lots of cool new releases, and inevitably when we get around to Horus Heresy 4th edition, it's fair to say they have some pretty big shoulders of giants to be standing on.
Really big shoulders. I think that'll be every edition, the shoulders get bigger. Soon it's just a pair of shoulders with legs sticking out the bottom of them.
Cool.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but I need to tell you about the Narrative Wargamer Patreon. Did you know, as one of our patrons, you can get access to exclusive benefits such as joining our community Discord, behind the scenes posts, early access to a range of videos, and bonus content, such as us playing a D&D style 40k one-shot roleplay game, and a brand new narrative play mission available every month to download and try yourself in your own games of Warhammer 40,000 on the tabletop. These monthly missions have been put together by myself, offering a fun and exciting alternative to the standard matched play missions, and each one comes with its own optional set of environment rules for an added narrative twist. Our patrons are super important to us, and without them, we wouldn't be able to produce these videos or the podcast. So I want to say a huge thank you to all of our existing patrons, and if you want to help support the channel yourself, you can sign up over at patreon.com/Narrative Wargamer, or follow the link in the description below.
Well, the other thing we're going to sort of talk about tonight as well then is going to be the Death Guard. Very much so.
Yes.
In the 41st millennium, and in their very degraded and mutated and nurgly state that they are compared to what they were at Istan.
Yeah, they haven't washed since then, but they're very much changed.
So yeah, we'll return to the realms of 40k, and we'll have a look now at the Death Guard on Crusade. So, Dan, I believe you've had a chance to sort of go over the Crusade rules for Death Guard a little bit to just sort of get it fresh in your mind. If you want to,
I've had a
rundown of it all.
I've had a read through. It's familiar in some ways to the Emperor's Children. I imagine there's a sort of intent of all the cult legions having a theme, but similar but different. So we've got two sort of bonus mechanics, one of which is about creating your own plague, which is a sort of, I guess, the equivalent of the gathering the bits for the elixirs section from the Emperor's Children. And then there's the alchemical pathogens bit, which I guess is similar to making the elixirs. Except that in this book, those two things are entirely unrelated. They just happen to both be going on at the same time in your army. So there's very little overlap, which is...
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's a thing.
So I'm guessing one or both of these are presumably somehow related to the contagions ability of the army?
Yes. So we'll get through it in more detail shortly, but the plague section is sort of a wider strategic thing where there's a planet that you're conquering and you've got to make numbers go up and down, similar to we've seen in a lot of Crusade books. And doing so gives you a bonus that kind of improves your Crusade going forward at the out of game level, like gives you more requisition points, that kind of thing. Whereas the alchemical pathogen section is directly affects your contagion rule, sort of. Well, I say that, it doesn't. It directly affects your lethal weapons, which obviously are in most of the army, but interact with the contagion rule in that most of the time you're in contagion range when you're doing it. We'll see that shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's one thing that kind of is a wider strategic thing that affects your Crusade as a whole, and another one that is affects your individual games, basically.
Okay, which is why they are of separate entities within this Crusade mechanic.
Yes. Yeah, even though they are sort of similar theme.
Okay, cool. Which one are we starting?
Well, we'll cover a couple of little niggly bits first. Firstly, there's a little box that says that Poxwalkers and Plague Legion units don't get upgrades. Plague Legion, obviously demons. You can include the demons that are in the Death Guard book, but they don't get any XP. And Poxwalkers also don't get XP. And neither of them take out of action tests either. They just exist.
That makes sense.
As we will see shortly, the zombies can be better. There are ways to get better zombies in this.
Okay, so you're going to be upgrading them with stuff that's like given to them as opposed to what they are earning themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. The other interesting point is there is a Boons of Nurgle table. Again, very similar to the other Chaos books, and I believe similar to the Chaos Space Marines. A D33 table of upgrades you can take on a character. Then there's a requisition to turn a character that's got 3 of them, I believe, into a Demon Prince, with all the upgrades on it. And if you roll the same one twice, you get turned into a Spawn. Classic stuff. None of those
all the upgrades on it.
boons are... Yeah. A super buff Spawn. None of the upgrades are like super exciting. They're basically all stat increases or like special rules. Like you can get a Veil of Flies that gives your model's units the stealth keyword. Billowing Miasma adds 6 inches to the model's contagion range. Stuff like that. None of those actually interact with the kind of extra Crusade special rules.
Yeah. So basically, this is a theme we've seen in all the Chaos books so far. Basically, in your standard rules for Crusade, you have a few different options in terms of like upgrade tables when it's time for units to earn and select upgrades. In the case of all the Chaos books, one of those additional tables of options is their Chaos Boon table. So, like I say, it's mutations, it's gifts from the gods. It's just a specific upgrade for that character when they earn it. And in the case of the Emperor's Children book, that table is all very Slaanesh flavoured upgrades, and in the Death Guard one, it's all very Nurgle flavoured upgrades, presumably. So yeah, that's just
Yeah.
their unique upgrade table available to their legion in Crusade. But that's like you say, almost an aside to the main mechanic of what they're doing with their resources.
Yeah, I remember in the Emperor's Children one, I think there were a couple that gave you more special ingredients and stuff like that, but there's none of that in this one, sadly. So the first of the two main extra bits, the extra rules, is the Grand Plague, which is your creation of a plague. It's 2 full pages of very complicated diagrams and stuff. So I'll kind of start at the end. I think probably makes the most sense of what you're trying to achieve with this. So
the Chaos Tome obviously makes sense to start at the end.
yeah. So, well, the quick overview is that you are creating a plague, and to do that, you have a world that you're trying to conquer, and there are various statistics associated with that world and the plague you're generating, and you want to get all of those numbers to add up to 7, because Nurgle's number. Incidentally, this is episode 70, right? So, Nurgle's number.
It is.
Oh, nicely done.
And once you do that, you've created a plague, and then depending on how good that plague is, depending on the bonus you get for your army. If you get a plague that's has a high suitability score, then you get a small bonus. But if you have one that has a low suitability score, you get a big bonus, which is interesting. The bonuses you get gives you additional XP to a Death Guard character, presumably the character that's supposed to be running the process of creating the plague. And if you get... it kind of increases depending on how low the suitability score is. And if you get a lower... one of the 2 lower options, you get 3 or 5 XP. But it also gives you access to a Blessing of Nurgle, which is, as I was mentioning earlier, stuff like gaining extra requisition points. You could have... there's a bunch of them here that you could choose from. There's Endless Harvest. After each Crusade battle, roll a d6. On a 4+, you gain 1 additional requisition point. There's the one that I'm particularly interested in, Vile Possession. Each time you add a vehicle unit to your Crusade force, add the demon keyword to that unit's keywords if it doesn't have it already, and that unit gains 6 XP, immediately gaining it the Blooded rank. Select a battle honor as normal. So that's cool. So if you do all this stuff to get the plague, you can recruit more experienced demon engines or even demon predators straight off the bat, which is really cool.
I mean, that's really nice, because seeing Nurgle infested like Space Marine vehicles is something a lot of people have converted in their collections.
Yeah.
So being able to actually see a Nurgle infected Rhino, Predator, whatever, straight away in your own force, and actually have some rules to represent that is, I think, a really cool option.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a list of blessings of that ilk that you can gain if you do well enough, basically. So the way it works is you select a world, and you can either select a world from a pre-selection of Hive World, Agri World, or Forge World, or you can randomly generate one. And each of them has 3 characteristics: fecundity, population density, and vulnerability, each of which is scored out of 6. And your plague also has 3 characteristics, which are rate of reproduction, survival rate, and adaptability. And the total between one of the world stats and the plague stats, which it relates to, needs to add up to 7 to complete the plague, obviously. So, for instance, you have to have a vulnerability and adaptability adding up to 7.
Okay.
How do you do that, you ask? Well,
yeah.
well, obviously there are agendas, which we'll get to later. But there's a path of contagion you have to go down, a little list when you finish a battle, which starts with basically applying results from agendas. Then you check if you've managed to concoct a plague already. Probably not. Then you get to cultivate your plague. Roll the d6, add 2 to the result if you won the battle. On a 4+, choose one of the characteristics of your plague and add 1 or subtract 1 for the characteristic. Then you have to roll for counter agents. Roll 1d6. If the result is higher than the adaptability characteristic of your plague, reduce the vulnerability characteristic of your world by 1. Then there's a death toll. Roll 1d6. If the result is higher than the survival rate characteristic of your planet, reduce the population density characteristic of your world by 1. Once you've done so, if your world's population density characteristic is lowered to 0, your quest has failed. No plague for you. And then finally, you must check to see if you've got to break through and completed and concocted a plague. That's a lot of words and a lot of numbers. So it's a bit confusing. I read this page or 2-page spread a couple of times to try and work out sort of what you're supposed to do. And what it actually is the worlds have a suitability score, which we previously mentioned you want to be as low as possible to get the best results. And the suitability score is the addition of all of the points in those 3 characteristics I mentioned earlier that the worlds have. So to get the best results, you have to have the worst starting world and increase the characteristics of your plague the most to make it equal 7.
Right. Okay. So you're putting in the most work.
Yeah. Alternatively, you can have a world that starts out really high in all those stats, and then you don't have to do you have to do hardly anything to make it create the plague. But then you get a high suitability score, and you get very little reward. So hopefully that sort of starts to make sense now. The more work you put in, the more Papa Nurgle rewards you.
Cool. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Having not read through it myself, this does sound like probably the most convoluted one so far we've had in 10th edition.
Yeah, I wasn't joking when I said it's quite complicated.
Yeah, everything you've described there, at least, is stuff that effectively is your between-game homework. At least this isn't something that's slowing you down at the table. Rolling dice with your opponent and sort of stalling that sense. This can be done on your own time, I suppose. Yeah,
literally, this 2-page spread of the Grand Plague section, none of it occurs during the game itself. So that's nice. As I mentioned, it is a lot to go through, but you can kind of go through it in order, whatever. The main point being that the numbers can go up and down, and you can modify them with the cultivation roll. There are other factors that modify it in this end of game section, and you can also modify it with your agendas. So the point being, you want to create a plague from the worst possible world to do it on to get the best reward. Or if you really want, you could just do a lot of easy plagues just to get some bonus XP and don't worry about the blessings. That's kind of what it boils down to in the end.
You may have already said this, but once you've done a world, you just move on to the next world then?
Yes. So as soon as you've completed a world, you failed, you make a new world. And it also says at any time, if you want, you can abandon the plague and move on to another world and try again. Like if you're not getting anywhere,
I do think it's interesting.
Go do an easier one.
I do think it's interesting that this is a Crusade rule set that has a fail state. It's not often we've seen many things that just kind of go, sorry, sir, you lose. You get nothing.
Yep. Yeah, if everyone in the world dies, then you can't do any more plagues. It makes sense, really.
Kind of makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Your plague was too good. Try again.
Like, looking at the page, it is very complicated. But on the next page, with the alchemical pathogens section, there is a nice A4 page section that is you have permission to photocopy from Games Workshop that has some of those key statistics on it that you can fill out over the course of your crusade. So you can kind of have your own little like plague character sheet, basically.
Okay. So
Dan, I have a question, mate, for
Yes.
you on it. A serious one as well. Does it, so having played Crusade in the past with against a lot of different armies, do you think it feels Death Guardy? I know that might sound ridiculous, but like the old guard one, I don't know so much about the new one, but the old guard one felt really very like, oh cool, I'm going on a tour, a military tour, I've done my tour, I go back and then I've got my medals and then I go on another tour. Does it seem to you like it feels Death Guardy, or is it
I'll tell you what,
not?
before I got the codex and read through this, I preempted it by listening to Lords of Silence by
That's a great book. That's a great book.
someone whose name I can't remember.
John
We should probably chat
French. I want to say John French. I think it's John French. I will quickly look that up. I was completely wrong. It was Chris Ray. I apologise. And Chris Ray has probably written the third best of the Siege books, if you haven't read.
Yeah, so like I said, Lords of Silence by Chris Ray, which I definitely knew, is a really good Death Guard book, Death Guard 40k book, right? And in it, there's lots of different characters who are all like weirdly into plagues and stuff in their own unique way.
I mean, it's not that weird. That's the stick, isn't it? It's
Well, yeah,
very
that's
on
the
brand.
thing. But like,
Very on brand.
one of them is like really into collecting insects and stuff, and another one is interested
I
in
see what you
making
mean. Yeah, they're very niche.
poxwalkers, and another like they've all got their own little niche and stuff. But it really kind of gets across the idea that all the characters have their own little projects, and that very much feels like this book. It feels like someone basically listened to that or read that book or listened to the audiobook but while they were writing this codex.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
okay.
good.
So to answer your question, yes. But specifically, if you've got that bit of background in your mind.
Right, that is very cool, because that is an excellent book to sort of peek behind the curtain of Death Guard. Not that you would want to, but
I think it's a great book at looking at Death Guard in 40k rather than just like the 30k stuff you know from if you listen to the Heresy books, right?
yeah, definitely.
So what I was going to ask Dan basically is, obviously you say you've gone through all this process about creating this plague.
Yep.
What specifically was the result, the end game of it? Well, you got out of the plague. Do you say it was just to do with getting more resources for like requisition stuff and so on?
It's completing the plague gets you XP for one of your Death Guard characters, and then if you complete a plague with a low enough suitability score, you get to have a Blessing of Nurgle instead, or as well. And the Blessings of Nurgle are the things that I described earlier. Various upgrades to your Crusade that kind of buff your Crusade, but not directly on the battlefield.
Yes. Okay, so just as a point then, if specifically the crafting of the plagues does seem like a lot of, homework and a lot of bookkeeping, you could in theory cut it out if you want.
Yes,
and not
I know what you were going to say there.
do.
You can absolutely just ignore it entirely.
Yeah, because ultimately what it's really just doing is giving you more like between game resources, things like requisition points, extra boon rolls and stuff like that, which obviously is a good thing to get, But the other aspect of what you're going to talk about now, did you say the alchemical stuff?
Alchemical pathogens.
Yeah,
this is the
thing
in-game
which
stuff. Yeah,
has the more in-game stuff. Yeah, so I mean, like I say, if I were to do it, I'd be crafting plagues. I'm sure it sounds like you'd be crafting plagues as well, but it does also sound like perhaps something which is a module, as it were, of their Crusade rules that you could lift out if you didn't want to do all that bookkeeping, and you'd still have something to play around with, which is these pathogens.
Yes, that's entirely fair.
Cool.
So the alchemical pathogens. This is the thing that happens in the game. You have essentially an ability that affects your lethal hit weapons. So all the weapons with the lethal hits keyword, which is a lot of weapons, and you can activate it at some point in the game in your command phase, I believe, and it'll last for that turn, and you get some sort of bonus for all those weapons. Now, initially, there is no bonus at all for doing this. It's just a thing you have. But as you go forth in your crusade, you will generate things that you can add to it. So you can do what... So some of the agendas allow you to do what's called brewing your batch. And if you brew your batch, you can add add a thing to the pathogen, basically. You can either increase the duration, you can add a property, or you can suppress a drawback. Now, duration is fairly straightforward. As I said, it happens, I believe, in your command phase. The default duration is 1. You can increase the duration. That's the number of turns it lasts. So if you have a duration of 5, it'll last the entire game.
So I was about to make the comparison that essentially this is a bit like the functions in a similar way to how the WAR works for orcs.
Yes.
Because baseline, it's a once per game ability that you can fire off that lasts through a battle round and gives an enhancement to your army. In this case, it enhances the lethal hits weapons. But, as you've just mentioned, it can be upgraded in various ways, including how long it lasts for.
Yeah. So the next bit of upgrades is the properties. So obviously these are the things it actually does. There are 5 of them, and 3 of them have associated drawbacks, which are quite bad. And as mentioned, the third thing you can do when you brew your batch is to suppress one of the drawbacks, which means you just don't take it. You ignore it completely. So that's cool, right? There's a lot of stuff you can do. Crucially, you're only allowed to have a pathogen potency, which is basically the number of boxes ticked on this chart, i.e. the number of times you've done the brew your batch thing to improve it. The number you can go up to is, do you want to guess?
7.
Correct. So, as mentioned, there are 5 properties, 3 drawbacks to suppress, and a duration of up to 5. That's 13. You can't have everything. You've got to kind of mix and match. And there is a way to change it mid-crusade if you don't like a thing, to drop it for something else. But you're limited to 7, so you've got a specific... You kind of have to tailor it to what you exactly want it to do. You could have it be not very powerful but last for ages. You could have it be 1 turn and have all the stuff. Yeah. So it's quite cool. I'll go through a few of the properties and drawbacks, because that's the interesting bit, right? So just imagine this is happening for your whole army on all the lethal weapons for at least 1 turn, which is for instance, in the Plague Marine squad, the bolt guns are lethal, the plague knives are lethal, most of the special weapons are lethal. There's a lot of lethal weapons.
Everything the Plague Burst Crawler does is lethal, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like its big maw, lance cannon things.
Yeah, the multi-melter on the Blight Hauler is lethal now. So there's a lot of lethal weapons. So the first property, it's to kind of give you a vague idea of the sort of thing we're looking at. Putridicity. that is, each time this model makes an attack with a lethal hits weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 5+ scores a critical hit. So, literally double the chance of lethals. That's pretty good, right? I'll tell you the drawback associated with that. It's subtract 3 from the strength characteristic of lethal hits weapons equipped by this model. So now you've got bolt guns at strength 1 that automatically wound on a 5 to hit. So swings and roundabouts, that one.
But yeah, no, I get that though, because basically it's going all in. So what you're basically saying is, I'm either going to hit and auto wound you, or do nothing. In most cases,
do nothing. Yeah.
So but you're twice as likely to get that auto wound. So you're basically saying 1/3 of my shots are going to hit and wound. Basically.
Yeah. But remember, of course, if you get enough points in this, you could suppress the downside, and then just have the bonus.
Away.
Yeah.
Right? If that's what you wanted to do. Another example, parasitic implantation. Lethal hits weapons equipped by this model have the sustained hits 1 ability. Pretty good.
Sustained and lethal. That is very good.
The downside to that is that each time the model makes an attack with a lethal hits weapon, you cannot re-roll the hit roll. Which
that's
obviously it's a bit less punishing than -3 strength, but on a lot of units it's a bit of a problem because there's quite a lot of combos to get re-rolls and things in the book. As mentioned, there's 2 properties that don't have downsides. I'll read one of them to you because it's my favourite of them. Spreading pox. If one or more units were destroyed by attacks made with lethal hit weapons while your pathogen is active, the first Poxwalkers unit added to your Crusade force after the battle gains 6 XP, immediately gaining the Blooded rank. Select one battle honor, blah 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 blah. So basically, if you kill someone with your pathogen, you get some cool Poxwalkers from them.
So, is this? I vaguely remember you said that they couldn't gain it. So is this like an exception?
This is an exception.
So you've gone from shambling zombies to running zombies, effectively.
Well,
you've upgraded.
Yeah, well, you've not upgraded. You've turned some people you've just killed into really cool zombies. Basically, that's what's happened.
Cool with shades.
Yeah.
They're the cool zombies. I quite like that. I think that's
like
quite
that
nice.
as well. That's cool.
Yeah. So, like I say, that was my favourite one. But it's entirely up to you how you want to build this plague. I like that mechanic. It's a lot more than the plague creation one. The alchemical pathogens, I really like the sort of mix and match abilities.
I'll tell you what this feels like, which is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This very much feels like the Escher drugs from Necromunda.
Yep.
Yes,
it does. I love that about it.
I know. I was going, I really like that. That's one of my favourite mechanics. So I could see you just going, oh yes, I'm going to make it.
That's why I play Escher and Necromunda, because I love the fact that they bring an aspect of chemical warfare to a tabletop game, which is not often explored in most tabletop games.
You know, Death Guard, we got it.
Yep.
So
I
that's
don't want to see Death Guard dressed as Escher though. That's gonna put me off the tee.
So that's the bonus rules.
I really like that. This idea that basically you're adding essentially like a WAR effect to Death Guard. You know, where you have this go turn ability where you can trigger it and suddenly everything army-wide gets better in some ways for a period of time. But being able to really tweak and adjust the numbers on how it does that exactly, I think is really a really interesting approach. I'll say, I think that sounds like that could have been enough as the Crusade rules for the Death Guard in itself. You know, as like
I think you're probably right.
The planetary plague thing seems a bit over the top for me, and this is me, and I'm usually someone who's really, really into the in-depth, you know, like bookkeeping stuff side of Crusades, and I know for a lot of people, they have a low tolerance for that kind of stuff. So I feel like the Plague Planet stuff is a bit too far, maybe.
I don't know. I think I don't know. Again, I'm so out of 40k Crusade and stuff because I know that the Tau used to have a similar to and Gene Stealer cult. Now, would it interested like? I don't know how you do it logistically, but how cool would it be if you had a Crusade group that you played with, but rather than making individual planets for your armies, you actually had a set of planets, and like it could be like you took all of your Crusade from each, like the Gene Stealer cult, the Death Guard, and you affected those planets, and once they're gone, or once they're controlled, or once they're greater gooded, or plagued to death, then that's it, they're locked in. And then you build up, you actually start building up a sector or a system,
or rather you destroy a sector or a system.
How cool. You're basically ruining a system. But how cool would that be? How amazing would that be? And it's like, first person who gets that planet, done.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, and I do think that would be a great job for, like, a campaign manager and organizer to run and organize and sort of set all that in motion. Which I think it just goes to show you that this part of the Death Guard Crusade rules you're proposing to use as a campaign system, because actually that's how large scale it is.
Yeah, it's huge.
So like it's almost like,
I didn't say it was a good idea. I said it was an idea. I didn't say it was a good idea.
It's a fun idea.
I'm saying, like the Plague Planet tracking thing feels more like a campaign level admin than individual Crusade level admin. It sounds like a lot. Like, if you want to use that, use it. If you don't, I don't think you need it. I think the pathogen stuff alone sounds like.
I mean, I think it's probably worth saying that as written, they are both entirely optional.
Yes.
The pathogens, you don't have to invest any points in it at all if you don't want to. So you can just play without it. And the plague thing, you're literally allowed to stop making the plague and then start making another one at any point. You could just not. It's fine. Like, the rules say that you don't have to, basically. I think, as you're saying, our thing now is do what you want with Crusade, right? Not do literally everything that it tells you, necessarily.
Pretty much, yeah, because there is so much there now, and so much of it can be cut out or is redundant, or just adds bloat to it and can be off-putting as such. So, if you don't need to worry about every single little bit of it, there's still plenty to go at.
Yeah, like you're not breaking the rules by not using some of this stuff. So if we move on to the battle traits briefly, there's a table for infantry units, a table for demon units, and a table for vehicle units, which there's a bit of overlap there. Interestingly, the infantry unit section has a bit saying if it doesn't have any ranged weapons or only has torrent weapons, you can reroll results of a 4+, because all of those affect shooting. Obviously, you can just pick or just roll as many times as you like because it's Crusade, do what you want. But it specifically tells you to not put a shooting buff on a unit that doesn't have any guns. Kind of makes sense. Of those upgrades, I will briefly point out my favourite, which is a vehicle upgrade called Skittering Limbs, which lets you move over other enemy units as if it were like a friendly unit, basically. So your Rhino just grows legs and just walks over the enemy. It's really cool.
Pulls its skirt up and like...
Yeah.
That was a
Brilliant.
tank joke as well, because tanks have skirt tanks.
Yeah,
I tried.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And then presumably the agendas in here are all the sort of usual things where you get a selection of optional objectives to achieve in your games, and in doing so you earn XP for those units that achieve them, and presumably some kind of bonuses or resources towards.
So there are 3 of them that affect your plague, the planet thing, that basically allow you to make one of those numbers go up. So to manipulate the numbers to get to 7, 3 of them that do that, and there's one called Vile Research that lets you brew your batch if you kill enough stuff, basically. So it's fairly easy. You just have to kill units that are afflicted within contagion range. If you kill enough of them, you can do the thing. Alchemical pathogens. Yes. Yeah. Going back to the pathogens, the requisitions allow you to brew your batch to add things to the pathogens. So you just directly plug requisition points into them, essentially, to make that happen. There are a bunch of others that change the effects of the planet for the plague. Stuff like careful cultivation allows you to do the cultivation step in that kind of flowchart twice, which is nice if you're leaning into it. There is a putrid ascension, which is the one that allows you to make a demon prince from a character who's got loads of boons. And there is wretched might for 2 requisition points, which allows you to select a Poxwalkers unit from your army and give them a battle trait, basically, until the end of the battle. They just get better. So that's the other way you can have better Poxwalkers. Theoretically, you could do that on the same unit, so that you could have a Poxwalker unit with 2 battle traits if you really wanted super zombies.
Cool. And then finally, I'm guessing there's some interesting Crusade relics. It's always fun to hear.
Yep.
Always fun to hear what they.
So, yeah, I have to admit, I read through them, and none of them really stood out as some kind of crazy abilities. But there's some like slightly interesting, fun stuff. There's the Bountiful Censor in the Artificer relic section that basically allows you to add 2 to the score on the Deadly Demise ability for units, friendly models within 9 of the bearer, so that it basically explode on a 4+ instead of a 6. So that's fun.
That's an interesting balancing act, because you'll want to be within 9 of him to make those things more likely to explode, but not be within 6 of him, otherwise he'll be caught in the explosion.
What would you say is the perfect distance for that character to be away from a vehicle?
Would it be 7 by any chance?
Correct. So that's kind of the most, like, the silliest one, I think. There's also Annoying Tome, a foul forged armor. In Antiquity relics, there's the Orb of Decay and the Casket of Corruption. And then the legendary relic is the Putrid Heart, which is...
Ooh, what does that do?
It's a Putrid Heart.
Which, going back to the Silence book we were talking about, that's in that. That item is in that
actually in
book.
Lord of Silence.
Yeah, because he puts it into, or it's something that's heart related. He keeps the heart of this guy he's keeping alive, and I imagine it's something.
Yes,
that's quite cool. If they are, I reckon they did just listen to that book when they were writing this, because there's a lot of things that are.
It's very on brand,
bells.
Isn't it? Similar themes. Anyway, the relic, what it actually does on the battlefield. It gives you a 5-up Feel No Pain and adds 6 inches to the contagion range of models in the bearer's unit. So on turn 3 onwards, that means your contagion range
quite nice.
Is 15 inches, which obviously is a big area of the battlefield.
Am I right in thinking that would also add to the range of the new, like, Contagion Lord guy who has an ability of his own that enhances the distance further?
Probably would, yeah. And then, I mean, at that stage, you're basically covering literally everyone that you'd ever want to interact with. So yeah.
I mean, at that point, it's going to be close to almost like an 18-inch aura from him or from his unit. He was just like in the middle of the table.
Yeah. Just everyone, all the time. Yeah, and it's not a like once per turn or anything, or once per game. It's the whole time. You've just got the increased contagion range and 5-up feel no pain. Nice and simple. Is it more fun than the vortex grenade? I don't know. That's always the question with the legendary relics, I think. But it's there, and it's fairly on brand for Nurgle, isn't it?
I think that's probably everything for tonight. I've had a good natter about the Death Guard there and their Crusade rules, plus some first impressions of new Horus Heresy. I think it's interesting times ahead. We've still got World Eaters and Thousand Suns to look at some point if we get people on to talk about them. I know Chris will probably be rearing to come back and tell us more about the World Eaters, and probably also Horus Heresy as well, because he's our other sort of major heresy player in our sort of little group here on the podcast. And we'll have to see what comes up on our future episodes soon, because hopefully I might be getting another fun facts episode together in the near future. We'll hopefully be... Yeah, well, Dan's looking forward to that. You always return to
yeah! Data Canyons ahoy.
We should hopefully have the new Crusade Armageddon book in hand soon, so we'll be able to talk about that as well. So I'll discuss that. I'm looking forward to these new warp affected environment rules and stuff. The Hellscapes, I think they were called. I'm interested to see how they're going to come into play in games. I'm looking forward to them. Lots of good stuff to come. So in the meantime, if you have watched and enjoyed this, then please do give it a like and subscribe. You can find me over on Instagram at Narrative Wargamer, as well as here on YouTube and on Spotify for the podcast. For Dan's, where can people find you both? Redtooth, where can we find you?
On the internet. That's a good place. I'm in various social medias as Redtooth, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and Blue Sky. I'm on there now.
I'm just on the Instagram because it's the only one I can do. at Garage Hobbit. You can look at the stuff I do. You don't have to. You can. It's nice. Can I do a shout out, Tony? Because I've found something that I think people might want to watch / look at, and it's nothing to do with me, but I have come across something which I think the production value of it is really, really good. I don't know if you guys have ever come across a channel on YouTube called Heresy Era. Watch their stuff. It's really good. It's battle reports done in the style of like miniature films is the best way I can describe it. And if you want some narrative stuff, it's a really good. They don't come out very often because you can tell that they I've having now taken part in some of your stuff prior, Tony. I know how long they take, but this stuff must take hours. Give it a go. They're really, really good. They've done and they don't do they do campaign / stuff. It's not here's just random battles, let's fight. It's actually there's a story behind it. They even put some sort of the last one they did was based off of one of the short stories from the Black Library, and they had they nicked bits from Jonathan Keeble reading bits out to have voiceovers and stuff. It was pretty cool. I just wanted to get. I think they need more people watching them because the stuff they produce is excellent.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their channel now.
Cool.
And yeah, it looks interesting. I'll definitely have a look at that as well myself. I'm always interested to see how people are presenting, battle reports.
I think it will be. Yeah, I think it would be up your street, Tony. Just from how you were doing your stuff, I think it's. I think you'll enjoy it, and anyone will enjoy it. I think it's not just two chaps, or two people in a room rolling dice. In fact, you don't see anybody doing that really. It's more fixated on the actual story and the models.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out then, and perhaps some of the viewers will do too. Cool, but yeah, so there'll be links to all our socials and to Heresy Era on YouTube in the description below. So yeah, do go check them out. And as always, if you do want to support the show here on YouTube, then you can obviously, as I say, give us a like and subscribe. You can go watch some of the other videos that I put up on here as well. I don't know if it will come out before this or after this, but I'm doing a first lore video here on the channel, either before or after this goes out, which will be all about sort of like current affairs in 40k. So it's basically all the open lore threads that are, sort of been dropped from the campaign books and stuff in recent months and years that have sort of been revisited and coming up and so on. And seeing where they're potentially going in the future. So that's what I've had fun putting together. I'm in the middle of editing it at the moment. You can, of course, go support us on Patreon, where we do have a Patreon now where there are monthly bonuses and bonus content for people. So say there's occasionally some early access stuff on there, but one of the main things really is the free monthly mission that goes up on there as well for Flash Kit tier patrons. So I put together one of my custom narrative missions every month, complete with its own set of environment rules as well, and it gives you another option to play your games that month. And if you do sign up to that tier, then you also get access to the full back catalogue of those. So as time goes on, there'll be more and more and more for you to try in your own games of 40k. And then we do also have affiliate links below as well for things like Element Games. So if you do want to buy any of your hobby supplies, books, models, any of it, if you go through our affiliate link, if you click that, it'll take you to Element Games. They'll know that you've come from us. And anything you do buy just gives us a little kickback, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it just helps support us here on the show. And yeah, I think that's about everything. So yeah, thank you both for coming and joining me tonight. I hope the viewers enjoyed obviously the conversation that we've had as well. And yeah, I think that's everything. So a little bit of a longer one tonight, but it's been good. We've basically talked about two different topics in one show.
Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And until next time, guys, this has been the Narrative Wargamer Podcast, helping you to discover more ways to play 40k or Heresy.